because
I'm freezing.
I'm trying to keep the electric bills down.
Don't spend more than we make. That's
Go get a couple of,
part of the plan.
Bring an extra spoiler. We're good. Don't increase that heating bill anyway.
I should have brought those
Hungry
fingerless
issue of
gloves
everybody.
that I have on my
Piece
desk.
of paper, a couple pieces of paper.
That would look silly.
You're sending people a message.
Like we're tightening our belt here.
Is Kaz coming?
Because I was all in a panic last Monday. So I'm
It's up
like,
to you.
oh, this
I
is
know,
the
but I mean,
Browns.
That was the day I said I was going to be there. Remember?
And I knew that.
And I should have texted you though, just because of our schedules are,
I'm good Monday if it is good for you. That's all.
Yeah, I'd say I know until we're ready to come, right?
It's good to see you again. Thanks for coming tonight. Just want to make sure.
Geez, I get her.
stand in.
No, I like it. I like it, it looks good.
So if that works.
Yeah, something started.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Let's get the show on the road here.
Okay, I guess everybody, as we ended the other night, thanks for coming back again tonight. And as we've finished the book, I think we're still in the deliberation phase. And if there's any questions anybody has at this time, let's start with that.
I guess so everybody knows, I know we had talked with Mr. Mann on the phone at our last finance meeting / budget session. And to be totally honest with you, it was very, very hard to understand a lot of your responses, a lot of your comments.
Sure.
And the mayor asked if we could have you come in tonight, and because you happen to be in town, and what better to get some of our direct questions to you where we can understand the answers than face to face.
I just wanted to start by adding some context about what I've talked about being disappointed in the process. So I spent most of today, it took me hours to do this. I created my own timeline for the city budget process in 2018 and the city budget process for 2019. So one of the things we were told, and this directly relates to the water thing eventually, when I talk about not having enough time, is that we were told that, hey, we got the budget earlier this year. So I went back and looked, and actually in 2018, we did not have the actual preliminary book, but on November 7th, 2018, we had a draft for the 2019 budget presented to City Council. That was not the book, but it was the outline of what the administration wanted to do. It had the higher amusement tax, the business license, the income tax increase, refinance the debt, the increase in the curb cut fees, the sewer increase, and the refuse increase. So I went through that and looked at how many different times we had budget sessions and everything. December 8th, 2018, I put together a list of ideas that council had brainstormed about ways we thought we could generate revenue. I shared that with everybody. On December 12th, I revised that list and categorized it so that it was by tax questions, suggestions, existing taxes, fees, and licenses, possible new fees, additional ideas for increasing revenue, and other concerns, questions, ideas on cutting expenses and improving operations. I don't think any of those things happened. And we found ourselves really at the same situation in 2019 going into 2020. We got November 6th, the mayor presented his preliminary budget to City Council. Now, that was the formal budget with, the whatever there, the spiral bound thing. I don't think that's that much earlier. It's one day earlier than the previous year. So it's not like it was bumped back a few weeks to be able to consider this. Again, we presented some ideas that we generated at, let me see, I have to see what the date was, where we did this. At the 4th study session this year on November 25th, we didn't have as many ideas, but we did have ideas, and I wrote them up, I shared them we had the meeting November 25th. I didn't have time to pull it all together till December 4th, I think it was. I sent it to council, and then I forwarded it to Paul on December 5th. Again, no reaction. It's like, okay, we'll talk about that next year. So that's my frustration, is that I thought maybe the process is slightly improved for this year, but it's not where I thought it would be, where we would be able to do this a little bit earlier. We had the preliminary report from PFM September 21st, I think, had a lot of good suggestions in there. So I'm not trying to be chicken to back away from stuff, but I don't understand why after I stood over there with a flip chart and we wrote down all those ideas, and none of them, even if they were small, even got a reaction. We ended up talking about compost again. Like, why are we giving away compost? Well, because it's, we don't have the right machinery to get it so that there's not impurities in the compost. But we asked the question a year ago. We asked about doing parking passes for residents, so we might be able to generate some revenue, but also be able to serve residents being able to park on the street. I mean, there were lots of ideas. So that's my frustration. I just want to lay that out, is that that's the way I'm approaching this. And I'm really grateful for Gordon coming here. The decision on the water lease, it's a big one. And, I started thinking about it as I was driving down here. One of the things that people keep saying is that the story in the newspaper that Kevin wrote said that, we were considering selling the water system. I went back and I read it. That is not what it said. It said sell or lease. So people who are trying to spin it and say, everybody panicked because it said sale, that's not what it said. You have to read every single word. Don't just skim stuff, or don't just take stuff and cast it the way you think you want to hear it. So I started thinking about that, and I thought of another idea. I think that this has happened in other places. I'm not saying that this is what has to happen, but it occurred to me that another option could be to have another leaseholder come in. I believe that has happened other places where you don't sell the system, but you might have other leaseholders bid on it. So those are just some of my frustrations. But I look forward to hearing a little bit more hearing more from Gordon and from the administration. I don't think this should be, though, come in here and try and just hammer us over the head and say, you have to do this, or you're going to have to raise property taxes. I don't think that's how negotiations or how the budget process should work. I think that there should be respect for what council brings to the table, and also some of the things that we're hearing out in the community. Concerns about, I could actually be one who would say, yeah, I think we should do this water lease, or we should sell it directly to Erie Water Works. But I just don't think it should be done within a 3-week time period that we were given. So, didn't mean to monopolize, but I had done all this work today, so I wanted to share it.
You did well.
My time.
But I believe, to part of the administration's in defense, there was a few items on that list from last budget session last year. We did increase some fees, and to be honest with you, I don't know the exact ones, but
Yeah.
it wasn't nothing there, okay? And I'm not saying we got rich off it or it was a game changer in the budget, but I think to Liz's defense, you add a few of those up, they add up to something, and then maybe it is something that puts a bigger impact on a budget. I think at this point, do we want to,
I can give a few comments if you'd like, or answer questions.
Sure.
Please use the microphone. So thanks for allowing me to come back. I am here out of 1 measure guilt and 3 measures excitement. So the 1 measure guilt was that you couldn't hear me over the phone. I realized that the audio was bad. And so if there's questions or give and take you want to have on the water lease or get our take on that, I want to be clear, audibly, what our view is about that, or if there's questions about what did you know and when did you know it. I don't think that's that excitement, but I can let you know. The three-quarter parts excitement is I actually emailed, I don't remember if, I think it was Renee on Tuesday morning and said, can I come on Thursday night? So I wasn't asked. It's not in the budget, so it's on us, not that that's a huge deal. The reason I'm here is because you guys are really close to doing something transformational on your pension issue. We've worked with so many communities who you explain the story, you explain the actuarial assumptions, you go through the numbers, and they go, and they hear you all the way through, and they go, nah, you know, let's wait one more year. And even when I talked with your unions, they said, you could tell them the story, you could talk to council, you could talk to other people. They're probably not gonna do anything about it, right? So now you guys are close. You're close to making, with the changes in your actuarial assumptions, with the changes in the mortality rate, and then not just making the changes, but actually doing something with the tax to fund it. You're really close to making a huge step forward on that really big, and what we talked about in September was the most important, or the first head of the dragon, right? And there are so many communities that don't do that. So take this for what it's worth. This part is a hard sell, but not because he asked. You're really close to doing something on the pensions. Don't miss that opportunity. Don't step away from that, because that's so important. And you're not gonna vote tonight and light will shine down from heaven and the pension problem will be fixed forever. It will take a while. But if you have the courage to do that, and to do that in this budget cycle, man, that will be huge for generations going forward, all right? He didn't ask me to say any of that. On the water lease, our view of the water lease, and this is what we tried to mumble through the phone the other week, is when the mayor or Ed brought it to us, they said, what do you think about this concept? And we had two questions. And these are the two things, these are the two ways that we would look at this to define whether this makes sense or not. First, is it a game changer for your debt, right? Are you going to use it on debt, or is this a way to do $5 million over here and $10 million over there and $15 million over there? Because as we talked about in September, we were looking for game changers on your debt and your pension. I think you found one on the pension side. This could be a game changer on the debt side in terms of paying it down. And the math, I think, is relatively straightforward. There is you do give something up, you give up the $3 million, you do get something, you get more on terms of the savings. I think the math works there. So that's the first thing. Are you using it for debt? Which it sounds like you are. The second thing, and maybe our first question, but the second thing is, does this preclude the valuation of the system, right? Because we were pretty clear about that when we were here in September, and we haven't changed our view on that. You need to do that valuation. And my understanding of the arrangement is that it does not. It does not preclude you doing the valuation. Now, my understanding to be completely forthright is what happens here is if they take on extra debt, if someone else were to buy the system, they would pick up the extra debt, right? So there's, again, just to be entirely forthright, this isn't like they're not doing this out of the goodness of their own heart and creating money from nowhere. They get something out of this. And I think we talked about what they get out of it too. I think what they get out of it is the ability to say, I have prepaid my lease, and now I can go out and market the system to other entities. When I spoke with them, that's what they were most interested in being able to do, they said there's whatever there's X number of communities in the area, and we're only serving 7 of them. If I can get some distance from the city, from this arrangement, then I can probably pull in 3 or 4 or 5 more. That I think is what they're after, right? I think that's what they're, it's not just because they came to save the day, but I think the math actually does work in your favor, provided it does not preclude the valuation, which you should do in whatever level of detail and take whatever amount of time on you want to take, because that's really, really important. We were okay with this, and that was our view of this: is don't preclude the long-term valuation and the question about what do you do with the system in the long term. And I don't mean what do you take a long time to decide, but what do you do with the system in the long term? And if you're going to do this, make sure you use it to pay down debt and don't use this to build little pots of money for 12 other things. That was really our take and our conditions on it.
I'm glad you said that thing about not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, because, and as I've said to a couple of people, and in I think some emails I sent, I went back and looked at when Erie Waterworks took over the Mill Creek water system, and the people who advocated for that had a very simple message: cheaper, cleaner water. But we were basically told that this was Erie Waterworks kind of feeling sorry for Erie and calling up and saying, hey, we can help you with this. I mean, call me a cynic, call me a skeptic. I know that it wasn't out of the goodness of their heart that they were doing that. We also have gotten very confusing messages about this valuation, when it will occur. And this is going to be the second or third time I've said this. One of the ways it was described is, well, we could do a half-assed valuation or we could do this full-blown valuation. So I don't know if there's going to be a half-assed valuation. I don't know if there's going to be a full-blown valuation. I don't know what the status of the RFP request is to have the full-blown valuation. I actually wanted to get some information about when the last time the water system might have had a valuation, and I did get some information from Paul's office on the whole Mill Creek thing, and if some of you will remember that the whole Mill Creek thing became, I don't know, what do you want to call it? It was a kind of a bureaucratic mess because there were two separate valuations. I think the original valuation said that the system would cost X. Yeah, there were two separate valuations. There was arbitration, there were lawsuits. So I hope that wouldn't happen in this case. So I guess I'm asking, when is this, are we crossing off the half-assed valuation and just going to the full valuation? I've been told, I know that you talked about, you said we could get the money for it in the next phase of whatever,
But I guess
the early intervention report, but when? So
Ed, do you wanna
what's
speak
the
to that?
status?
Since I
And
sent out the
please
RFP.
tell me what the status of the half-assed valuation is. I didn't make up that term.
Well, no, and I didn't use the full phrase, but that can be attributed to me. The problem is that as you're running up on the end of the year, you're gonna be, well, first of all, the idea of the evaluation, we had talked about it, but in the report from PFM, it identifies that an estimate of a cost could be about $10,000. So during meetings with administration, the mayor indicated, we could get the money, we have the money, let's go do it, and he ordered it to be done. The problem that we run into is that it would have to be done prior to the end of the budget time. And so as soon as the RFP went out, one response came back. At this,
that from?
I don't know, Paul?
PFM.
PFM. So, we want more than one. No knock on PFM, but we want more than one. During that same time period was when I sat down with the Water Authority, right at this, all of this is happening. Paul Wojtek tells me that his understanding of the cost of an appraisal that he was involved in with the Mill Creek was closer to $50,000, and that it took a lot longer. We then went back to PFM, a different arm of PFM, and asked them about how detailed do these get? And they indicated it's all in how detailed you want it. Now, I'm dumbing it down in my inappropriate language of saying half-assed, but that, when I tell you don't do a detailed appraisal and do it immediately, I'm not getting much value for what we're spending. And so we're gonna spend about 10 grand to rush something through. If we wait until the first of the year, and I came back to the mayor with this, I've told council this, if you wait until after the first of the year, after the report is out, if PFM recommends that there be an appraisal of the system, and council decides that it wants an appraisal of the system, we can request funding from the state, which if approved, would pay for 90% of the study. So I don't know that there's anybody, and I'm not a decision maker, but I don't know that there's anybody saying don't do the appraisal. I think there's clear direction to do the appraisal. But it doesn't seem to make sense to spend $10,000 of taxpayer money for, if I use the analogy of your home appraisal, it's nothing more than a realtor driving by going, yeah, it might be about a $100,000 house. I want something better than that before I actually sell my house.
And I think where we're at as a council, we agree with that. We don't want a quick appraisal, just like we don't want to make a quick decision whether we should make a deal and say 90 million, let's take the upfront money let's do the appraisal, let's do our homework before we make a decision whether we should do a 90 million upfront lease.
Well, those two at least appear to be separate. One, the appraisal,
Yes and no.
well,
We're
you're already
still-
locked into a lease agreement. And so the question of do you pre-fund it or do you don't pre-fund it, to me is a personal decision and a math equation. Do you get the appraisal? That seems to be critical if you're going to conduct any type of a sale. And you're not precluded from selling it. So if you say, all right, we're gonna, if you say, I wanna take the 90 million now, we'll take the pre-funding or prepayment of the lease. Now, next year, we do the appraisal, comes back and it says it's $1 billion. Wishful thinking, but it says it's $1 billion, and we say we wanna sell it for $1 billion. You would have to pay down the authority's debt, and you could then sell it, assuming you had a buyer for that $1 billion, you could then do so. It does not have any, I see those two as totally separate. You're not precluded or limited in selling the system. This is a determination you need to make of, do I want the money coming in a stream, or do I want it in a present value reduced lump sum? If you get it in a present value reduced lump sum, as I understand PFM, is they're saying, okay, if you pay down debt. If you're gonna buy a new building or buy new furniture, that's a train wreck. If you're gonna pay down debt, my understanding of the numbers is that you will save more on your monthly pay or your yearly payments than you will lose in revenue from the water authority. You will save about $6 million a year in interest on your debt, while losing $3 million in a year from income on the lease.
3 million now,
Correct.
but what that increases as we go.
And it's not even 3 million, it's 3 point.
Well,
Right,
Here's
so-
my problem, they're not separate, they are and they aren't, Ed, okay? Before we extend their lease another 10 years or so, okay? We might be getting taken to the farm, to the barn, literally. Okay, if that system's worth more than we think it is, I'd like to renegotiate the lease. Okay, paying up front sounds nice, and they've done it before. It's been done before, many times. And 20 years from now, you don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know where we're gonna be. As I asked the mayor, are we gonna be very prudent on not issuing too much more bond debt? It's fine what you say, okay? That's great, but if we keep issuing more bond debt, we're back in the same hole. And now we don't have income for 40 years. I mean, yeah, you
The
know,
last thing
I
we wanna
understand
do
your-
is in
but
10
we
years
don't have
saying, I
income
wish
for
we
40 years.
would have done something different. If we just need to do our homework a little bit more, not figure it out in 3 weeks for this year's budget. What I'm asking is, let us digest this more, see what all the ramifications are.
Maybe even
Because
negotiate the lease a little
in
bit.
10 years, the last thing I wish we would have did something differently. And I know I wish in 20 years we would have did something different. You know, I guess my thought here is, yeah, it looks good, it looks like, but.
But if you don't change the mechanics in the building, our culture around here has to change. What got us this problem where we are now is something we did, our ancestors did 20, 30 years ago. That's why we're in the hole, we're in the pension and everything.
I think
You
the
want
culture
me to
has
show you? I can take it right now up to the controller's office and show you where the problem began with the pension. And I'm not against the pension. The board has for years wanted to go along with these changes, but no administration, except for the present one, has ever wanted to make a move on it. So you'll get no argument by me. In fact, I'm ready to go, as you saw the other day, I'm ready to go all the way with this. Okay? Because I know the pensions, that's been a huge issue, and it was caused many years ago, because everybody loved that mayor. He was building things all over the city, taking money out of the MMO, that's what happened. And here we are, we had a pension fund funded at 35% back in the 60s or 70s. Now we're at, what, 70-some%, right? Hard work got us there. And then, you know, systemically, we got a lot of problems around this building. They gotta stop. And yes, this looks nice on the surface, but I wanna make sure that when I give up 40 years of income, I wanna make sure we don't go back in the same hole in 10 or 15 years. When the mayor's gone, when we're gone, we're back again. And we're hiring another firm like you to tell us we screwed up before.
Yes.
Okay?
Can I ask
I
a
mean,
question?
I seen it before. I'm 70 years old, okay? I seen a lot of this crap, and it's been marketed under different things. Oh, we'll take the money now and we never do it. Okay? That's my opinion.
Can I ask a question about just what you anticipate the timeline would be for evaluation? Because I just checked, and, I'm sorry, that half-assed, I mean, that's like, wow, that's such a,
That's a powerful word.
yeah. So, was the study by Frank Impagliazzo, P.E. and Snavely King, Majoris and Associates, Inc., which was done for the Mill Creek, about the Mill Creek Township Water Authority, September 25th, 2014 was when the report finally was made public, I guess. Was this a half-assed or was this a full-assed one? And the reason I'm asking is because Mill Creek went out, approved doing this study on June 17th, 2014, and it was finished on September 8th, although they did not release it to the public for a few more weeks. So it looks to me June to July, 3 months, or a little bit less. How long, is there a guess on how long it would take? I'm asking for a guess, I know not specifics.
The
How long?
engineers, as I said the last time we were together, all 4 of the engineering firms I spoke with said this is a 2 to 3 to 4 month process.
Okay.
Yes. For a full evaluation.
And that would make sense.
That's consistent with what the folks in our firm.
Okay, so I'm just trying to do a work back if we had this full valuation by January, February, March, April.
And your folks in your firm, they have done this type of lease
Yes.
agreement or selling of?
Both, yeah, both. So Allentown did a lease with a regional authority. Scranton did a private sale. So both.
And how long ago?
Downtown's only a year or two.
A little more than that. I would
Was
say
it?
2015 for Allentown. Scranton is more recent, but both in the last 5 years.
I was just curious, and
Yeah.
I know 5 years probably isn't a fair assessment or value, whether that was a correct decision to do or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I guess I'm
It's
looking
hard
for
for
something
me. I
that may
didn't-
have happened a
Yeah,
little.
so I didn't work with with either of those two cities, so it's hard. I can only tell you what I've heard. For Allentown, I think they got a lot of money and it helped with their pension problems, but it didn't take them all the way. I don't know that they were as frankly as disciplined about where they spent the money as they should have. That was some of the genesis for my don't take $5 and $10 million and spend it all over town, just based on, again, what I'd heard. They had really big pension problems, and I don't know if they did anything on or even if they needed to on the actuarial side, right? So it's not just dump more money in the tub, it's how fast is the money flowing out of the tub. What I would say on the valuation, and this is some of what I blurbed through the phone that you weren't able to hear, is we've tried to keep the same company. It is the same company, Public Financial Management, so we're not running away or hiding from that. And I asked them how to do this when we came and met with you in September. You ought to get whatever full evaluation you want. If the $10,000 half-assed valuation doesn't work, then don't take it. I don't care who it's from. When I read the article, I saw that you had solicited a proposal from three entities: Senate Engineering, who I've never heard of, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't work in this industry. PFM, who obviously I know, and Raftellus, who's very reputable. And this will sound weird, one firm complimenting the other, but they're a strong firm, and they you want them to be involved in the bidding process. So take whatever time, be as specific as you can in the valuation, so you don't get one half-assed and one full-assed valuation, so that you can compare them. But get whatever you need. I don't think it takes more than, everybody's saying, whether it's the engineering firms or PFM or whoever, is saying 3 months for that phase of it. But get whatever it is you need Don't just take the lowest number if it doesn't meet. The idea here is, the goal here is to get you the information you need so that you can make comfortable decisions going forward, not that $40,000 is nothing, but in the scheme of a $700 million, or whatever this thing is worth system, it really is.
Did you do Reading?
I'm Reading's Act 47 oversight
What
coordinator.
did you tell them about Lisa?
So
I got a confused message when I read that report.
Sure. So Reading had looked at Reading, when they first entered Act 47. The question was whether they should try and fix all their problems by selling they have a water system. They have a sewer system that's in a consent decree that no one will buy, but they have a water system. They are the provider for the region, much like you are. They have a regional authority, much like you do, that is effectively city-run. Up until 2 weeks ago, the chairman of the board was the public works director. They were all mayoral appointments. So it was, while it's the Reading Area Water Authority, you could drop the area, it's really a city authority. We looked at that early on in our process, and we said, because of where you are, this is the last thing you want to do right now.
It's selling.
Was right, because they were on the point of, they were spending money faster than they had it. They had taken money out of their sewer fund. They had too high an actuarial assumption in their pension plan, should sound familiar. They had just enabled their cops to retire at age 40. They had 40, with health care for the next 30 to 40 years of their life. They had crushed themselves with all these bad decisions. And the water sale, in some people's eyes, could be an easy way out. And our message to them was, for them, where they were at the very start of the Act 47 process, is we need to fix a lot of things first.
Did you suggest that they take an advance payment?
So here's what happened. The law changed in 2014-ish, and instead of being able to take whatever amount of money you wanted from the authority, they had to be able to justify it. So they got their local college to do their evaluation, Albright College, which is in Reading, and they said, we think the system's worth X, and then they made the lease payment off of that. Now, the concept of whether to sell the lease payment, so this is a terrible analogy, but this is the one we use with them. If you are a drug addict or a gambling addict, the first thing we do is not give you $100 million because we know where that will go. We need to get you clean and sober first. Then we came back to the idea of the water lease about 4 or 5 years later, and what they said to us was, over our dead bodies, right? We don't want to sell it. This is our crown jewel. We feel like the region has taken advantage of us for years. This is the suburbanites pillaging us one more time. No way. We said, okay. It was pretty loud and clear, and they're home rule, so they can do some things that you can't. They went into their charter and said, the only way you can sell the system is if you do something else which will prevent you from ever selling the system. So the concept again, you're in a different place from they, and you're trying to avoid Act 47, not freshly stepped into it like they are. If you were in their situation, we would say the same thing. Don't go get a big shot of money when you've got holes all over the boat, right? But in this case, where you have the chance to get some money to fill some of the holes in the boat, it looks a little different. And again, the lease payment, when the idea came around 4 or 5 years later, once we had fixed the pension assumptions, paid the sewer fund back, got current on the pension evaluation, got their budget balanced on an annual basis, couldn't do anything with the cops who retired at 40, just basically ate that one. We said, okay, now we could talk, now you're ready, now let's talk about the lease payment. And in their case, it wasn't a lease payment, it was, are we gonna sell it to Aqua or Pennsylvania American or whatever? And again, the city was very clear in saying, nope, don't wanna do it. And so we said, great, that's the end of the conversation.
I like the analogy, but if the boat develops more holes all the time.
No, you're right.
That's what I mean
What
by
I would say,
changing the culture.
right?
around this.
What I would say about your debt is, depending on what you issue that debt for, right? So yeah, I think your point about, I'm going to need new debt in the future. Depending on what that debt is for, if that debt is for road paving, fire trucks, you're going to need that anyway, right? So if you do nothing and walk away
Not
from
really, okay, I would disagree with you, I would
Okay.
say that, talking with other communities,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they handle road repair through liquid fuels,
Mm-hmm.
or they handle it through tax levies, you know, dedicated, dedicated tax levies with appropriation ordinances. You know, funding roads that aren't gonna be around in 5 or 10
Right.
years, that's a fool's.
Yeah, you
when I
don't
was an
fund that.
accountant,
I'm totally with
my-
you.
My
Yeah.
professor again would have thrown
Yeah,
me.
you don't fund,
Yeah.
you don't
I would've
use
got
30-year
that.
bonds to pay for roads that
Right,
break down.
and buying
5
fire
to 10 years.
trucks.
I'm with
I
you.
mean, that's where
I'm
we
with
go
you.
to colleges, we start the hammer movement.
I'm with you on that.
I understand, look, if we get a major catastrophe, yeah, we're gonna have to float.
That's what I meant.
But we throw bond issues around here like it's the panacea, because we're kicking that can down the road. I'd like to call it, he gets mad at me, the Scottish hammer, the Cleveland Browns punter. We love punting that ball 40 yards down the field. We'll wait until we get down there, it's like golfing. You hit a ball and you chase it. Oh, yes, yeah. I'll pop it another 200 yards and worry about that in the future. That's our problem. Okay?
Nice shot.
We have to start getting out of the habit of floating bond issues because it looks good to the taxpayers. Because, oh, our grandkids will, well, I'm not gonna be around, okay? The trouble is, that comes, somewhere down the line, you're gonna hit a wall.
Yeah.
And that can's gonna bounce back at you.
I mean,
Okay,
you-
that's what I mean by the systemic, never change in this building, and we're going, oh, we got all this money, and it's been done before. I've seen it here.
I have a question though, because you mentioned don't take part of the proceeds and you put some here and some there. But I am correct that $5 million of this upfront lease payment is going to be used to balance the budget, correct? And then
That's what I
how much is gonna go to the economic development fund?
4.1 to balance the budget, 1.75
Yeah.
to the economic development. That's the number.
And
4.1.
you know, so is that, it would be better if it were all towards debt? I mean, just from the concept, but I understand that. Part of the reason you have to do the 4.1 is timing related. So you already restructured your debt, so you can't pay down the stuff you restructured. So you sort of, because you already pushed it down, you sort of have to wait for it to come back up to pay it off again. So in my view, and I understand this sounds a little bit like rationalization, right? The way I view it is, okay, the end goal here is to pay down debt. That's whatever, 85, 90 million, a large percentage of this is. And if I can't do it for a year and I need something to bridge for 365 days, me personally, I'm not voting on it. I can go, all right, okay. But what it's not is, you know, using money to buy new plows or whatever. It's not what some communities have done where they sell it as debt reduction, but when you look at the breakdown of the proceeds, that's maybe half the money.
Okay, and then what happens if we do this for 2021? Don't we still have a projected deficit for 2021?
Correct.
And how are we gonna,
You know that answer, I mean, here, pair of pants. Which pocket you wanna take it out of? Oh, come on, Paul.
I thought he was gonna prune us.
Yeah, that's
Half or full.
I mean, we know what the answer is. We know what it is, Liz. It's unpleasant, but.
I have a question. This is connected but not specific. So if we were to take the upfront $90 million lease payment from the authority, we do the evaluation, it's a great amount, whatever it is. And then we end up selling it, deciding to sell it, the city decides to sell, and we sell to the authority. Does that $90 million upfront lease payment come out of the sale price? Or is that something that have to be negotiated?
Yes, because what would happen is you pick, what's the price, pick a number.
So let's say it's $300 million it's worth, and they're willing to, I know it's not. I'm just-
Okay.
But, and they wanna buy it for that much.
So
I mean, I don't know if
assuming
it's
that they
not-
had no other debt, assuming that they do have other debt, but assuming they have no other debt, just for simplicity,
Okay,
and it's valued at 300 million, they borrow 90 million to prepay their lease, then we would have to pay off that amount with the proceeds. So we now have the 300 million, 90 million would pay off the debt to the bank. We would pocket 210. But the numbers are actually worse than that or bigger than that, not worse. They're already in excess of $200 million in debt. This would put them closer to $300 million in debt. So the number would have to be something bigger than that, in order for there to be money.
Ed, can I interrupt for a second? When you're talking about their debt right now, this lease prepayment is currently on their debt. It's carried on their long-term debt. So, as Paul explained the other day when he was here, they are going to issue debt to relieve that debt. So in their case, this is a net no change.
Right.
But Ed's,
But
not
with-
to back
but-
up what Ed said, yes.
But with that
then
said-
that would be negotiated as part of the
lease-
sale.
the sale.
The lease was non-existent.
If the system were to be sold.
Well, can I say, finish?
Oh, I'm
can I
sorry,
say-
yeah.
Just, and the reason I ask is because if they're prepaying for 40 years, but after a year, they own it, it makes sense that we would have to give them that money back. Because they don't, because
That would be in
there's no
part-
lease payment anymore, we don't own it, it's their they're not gonna pay
Right,
twice
that
on
would
it.
be part of the valuation. That part of the financial
Yep, yep.
part of the valuation.
So it could either be deducted in the evaluation as far as the
Could-
value, or in negotiation of the sale,
Yeah.
it would be
It's
assessed.
all taken in total.
Sure.
Again, like I said, there's the three valuation methods, market, financial statement, and Andrew, what's the third? Income. So, yeah, and those are all written by the PUC.
This is what I read on Tuesday.
So,
Okay.
it's all the non-factor of the lease is taken into account with that. So it could, yeah, to answer your question, no lease could possibly impact, it could impact
The sale price.
the sale price, one way or the other.
Sure.
So if it were to be sold, now Erie Waterworks has asked for the right of first refusal. What are the rules in terms of, like, public law, in terms of going out for bids to sell an asset like that? I mean, and what does it mean that they want right of first refusal? I found out that, I think in Bucks County, the Bucks County, whatever their system is called, Aqua wanted to buy Montgomery Township in Bucks County. And Bucks County came back and actually outbid Aqua, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what does it mean to say, we're giving them the right of first refusal? And second of all, what are the legal obligations if it were to be sold? Would you have to go out for bid to see who would have the best price?
I
And-
keep hearing this talk of right of first refusal. I have not seen a document that contains that language or that meaning.
It's in the paper.
I understand, but I haven't seen a legal document. And I'm not gonna get into it in a public session, I have problems and issues with a pure concept of a right of first refusal. I'm not gonna talk about them here. But what I will say is that it is your duty, always your duty, to do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers. So you cannot contractually enter into an agreement to the detriment of the taxpayers. I mean, you might make a bad deal at some point, but you can't say, I'm gonna give you an insider's deal to do something that's worse for the taxpayers than what somebody else is gonna do. You can't do it. So I can't get into specifics, but I haven't seen anything. What I can tell you is that if there is language in there, I will not allow, or to the extent I will advise you strongly not to sign something that in any way puts the taxpayers at risk or at harm.
And
And
is
Mr.
there an
Betts, is it-
actual agreement that's like, I mean, is there a draft floating around somewhere of an agreement for this payment?
No.
And
Not
Mr.
that's been
Benson,
presented to
that's
me.
our problem. We read this stuff, we hear this stuff, and we're the ones that's supposed to decide.
I understand.
We're recording it, we
Cass,
don't
can
even know
I
if it's
speak to
fact.
that? I mean, Paul Wojtek was here, and
said
he
that.
laid out these pieces of information. No, there's not a written, nothing perfected, because we don't have an agreement from council that they would be willing to do the lease prepayment at this time. Paul just threw out a couple of things. He said, if you'd like, we will prepay the lease with a 10-year extension. Everyone, I don't wanna go on ad
And I
nauseam.
don't- and it's
Everyone heard what he said.
It's recorded.
Yes.
And I don't remember exactly, but I thought that he mentioned the concept of the right of
think
first
he
Yes, he
refusal.
did. He said after, and to back up Liz's, after the full evaluation is done.
Right.
And if a number comes back when he sat here that day at $200 million or $63 million, whatever the number may be, their interest is in saying, okay, it came back at that amount before we put it out for RFP. And again, Ed's right, there's nothing, and I'm just going on what he said that day. And he doesn't have, his solicitor, Mr. Senate, did not hand us a contract. And the multiple times I've talked to him, the concept is, if the evaluation comes back at $210 million, we know it's worth $210 million before it goes out for RFP for sale in any way, shape, or form. They'd like to say, well, the valuation said $210 million. And that'll be something Ed and Tim would put together, that legal document to say that. So I guess, and to back up Ed's point, if the valuation says 210 million or 53 million, whatever the valuation says, we're not gonna give them a deal at 37 million over 53 or 190, wait, no,
you're right,
at
you're
190 over 210. Their ask of us is, if it comes back at X dollars, could they sell it to us first, or could we sell it to them first at X dollars? And then Ed and Tim would,
Okay, sure.
that
Just so we're clear, where they're coming from in my discussions with them, I've not seen any document of any kind, any draft, I haven't seen any language. My understanding is that if they don't want a situation where we say, hey, I might wanna sell it, and we end up finding somebody that says, hey, I'll buy it, and we say, okay, we'll do it. They say, please talk to us before you do it.
Sure.
That concept does not offend me in any way to say we created an authority, we're gonna talk to them before we do a sale. That makes great sense.
I can give you a practical example that's playing out right now in Wilkes-Barre. So Wilkes-Barre has a system of sewer lines under it. Doesn't have a wastewater treatment plant, but the pipes that carry the matter are worth something. They went out and did a valuation. PFM, the other side of the firm, is the lead on this. They did the valuation. They went out with 3 bidders, Aqua, Pennsylvania American, and their local authority, which is the Wyoming Valley Sanitation Authority. And they started down the bidding process, and I don't know whether it was the mayor or council, but they said, stop with the private bidding. We want you to go talk to the public authority first, because we're concerned about rate increases, and we'd rather keep this publicly owned, and these guys are our friends, and all the other reasons that you could come up for being hesitant to selling it to a private company. And so that's what happened. The city went to that authority, said, here's our number, here's what the system's worth, and the authority in that particular case couldn't meet it. They said, I can give you less. And so what the city said is, that's not enough, now we're going to proceed with the other 2 private bidders. But they were given, I don't know if you want to give first crack, right of first refusal, whatever, they were given that, and that did not create, I hope it didn't create any kind of legal issues, but that's the way practically it played out, because they wanted to give, for reasons that may not or may exist here, they wanted to give the public authority the first chance, but when they couldn't hit the number, they just moved on.
Here's what I heard. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen this play out in different decisions. If we give them the right of first refusal, and it happens with ball players, and you read this all the time. Say they come up with a agreed upon value, let's go with the 210, okay? That was a good number, no, the 210, okay? Everybody agrees that's the value, okay? So they come in and said, okay, we'll meet that. And we got a binding contract, which I'm just saying, assuming it's that, okay? Not that, if we were stupid enough to sign this, and we have a binding contract, and they say, well, we'll meet the 210. And then down the road, you got, not too far down the road, you got another company says, well, we'll pay us a premium for it, we'll give you a 220. That's not impossible to believe.
Sure.
Knowing that they can raise rates and everything.
Right.
I think if you sign that contract, okay, we're gonna be in court, because they're gonna say, hey, you signed a document that we had the right to meet the fair market value, and that's why I didn't think I liked that idea. You can disagree with me.
No, I'll just say, I will not let you, I will not even put before you a document that would be not in the best interest of the taxpayer.
That's what would happen, right?
You may have an interest. This group may say, look, I'm not selling it privately. I want to keep it within the authority. you might be able to get more money from an outside entity than the authority. And I could certainly see this group saying, no, it's better for the taxpayers to keep it within our authority. That's your decision. If you make that decision, you can say, I acted in the best interest of the taxpayers. You do that, I got no issue. What I do have an issue with is contractually you being required to do something. I have to sell it outside or I can't sell it outside. I've sworn already once before, but BS on that. You make the decision. You will decide if it goes outside or inside. All that the authority has indicated to me, the only thing is, please don't leave us out. And from discussions, I sense you don't want to leave them out. You at a minimum want to include them in those discussions. So I think all of this discussion about that language that hasn't even been drafted is not a factor. I'll just suggest don't worry about that. There will never be an agreement that I would put before you that would have provisions that would put you at jeopardy.
Ed, I trust you, I appreciate your comments, but this is the problem we have with council. We shouldn't have to read about this stuff. We shouldn't have to hear this.
Well, I'm reading about it. There's nothing
understand.
I write memos to council.
Yes.
I don't hide anything from you.
And I don't know who opened up their mouth and put that out there, if it's on their end or what, but that's the kind of stuff that leads to the problems we're in now.
It is not here. So
So
it's
if I
not
could-
here.
So I think if we, and I do personally, and hopefully as a group, I'd imagine we trust what Ed is saying.
I do.
And since we trust what he's saying, we can kind of make that a moot point, because there's other people's distracted language that's got us stuck on something that's not an issue right now, personally, I think. And so, with that said, I guess my question, and I don't want to overly move too fast, but does it have to be an all or nothing? And I'm not talking about, when I say all or nothing, if we do not take the upfront lease payment, does that mean that we cannot make some of the actuarial changes that we would like to move towards making? If those things can happen separately, how does that happen? It happens by a tax increase, correct? And so my thing going back to your Mr. Mann, it's so funny when you said Mr. Mann, I forgot your last name was Mann.
Yeah.
I was like, is he being sarcastic? my grandmother
even worse for my wife.
Well, my grandmother used to call us Mr. Mann. What do you think you're
Right,
doing, Mr.
yeah.
Mann? So a little playfulness. But if we take our time with this 90 million, and we're willing to make some of those actuarial changes, if not the full 6% ROR and all the way up to the most recent mortality table, but maybe an incremental step in this first year, and raise taxes at a certain amount that's maybe this body would be comfortable increasing taxes to, is that a bad thing to do en route to the ultimate evaluation and taking more time to see if this upfront lease payment is the best thing for us at moving forward? So again, right now it's crafted, the question is, or the debate is, 90 million, it totally affects everything else, even though it's indirectly, it affects everything else.
Yeah.
No tax increase.
Yeah.
Or no 90 million, significantly higher tax increase if we want to keep those actuarial changes
Yeah.
in place. I'm asking, is there somewhere in
Yeah.
between?
So my understanding, and Paul will be able to answer this probably better than I can, but my understanding is those two issues are separate, right? So the actuarial and the mortality changes, that factors into your MMO, and the way you're going to cover a higher MMO is the distressed pension tax, right? Which is the thing on residents and non-residents. So that's with what's in there, you would take it up to 165, which is where it already is for residents. So you could take it up to a smaller number, bring the resident number down, and make more modest changes on the pension side. All of that is not connected to the water lease. So you could do all of that. If you said, heck no, we're not doing the water lease prepayment, we're definitely doing a tax increase, you could still do the pension thing.
Well, I
believe.
think, and I agree with you, and I understand that part
Right,
on paper.
okay.
But maybe the reality is that if we don't take this lease, it definitely affects the tax increase.
That's correct.
And so in
Yes.
that way, it's connected.
So in that
So
way,
there is
right, if you're
We might be
thinking,
loosely net, but
right,
we're net.
but here's, it would, the person that you're going going to affect by doing less, and you can make a decision for yourself whether this is a group of people you want to help. The only person that you will save taxes for by not going to the extent the mayor is gone are non-residents. Because the only person who's gonna pay more for taxes on the pension fix, that whole thing, are the non-residents through the distressed pension tax. So if you are trying to your point about, yeah, but if I do a tax increase over here, do I really want to hit the residents twice, right? Do I want to hit them because I need to close the budget deficit? You won't be hitting them with the pension thing because they're already at 165. So
Which could drop a little bit.
it could, and it would be, so, and it, yes, it could, right? So could you do 6.5 or 6.25 or something like that? Yes, right, I think you could. The lower you go, the better your chances of saving money in the long term, because basically you're making the target easier to hit on an investment assumption basis, which means you're more likely to hit it, which means instead of those investment losses that we were talking about, you had investment gains. And that's the whole thing about
By
this.
lowering the assumption.
Right, and the fact that you could do that without changing what the resident taxpayer here in Erie pays from December 31st to January 1st is just kind of a happy coincidence, right? I could use this much more aggressive number, I could increase my chances of doing better in the future, which will drive down your MMOs, and I don't even have to increase the income tax. All I gotta do is bring the non-resident up to meet it. So that's one whole thing. The water system lease and whether you take the prepayment and pay down debt or do a real estate tax increase, that's something different. If you don't fix the pension things, you're still gonna have the tax rate increase on the water lease. And if you do fix this and you don't take the water lease, you're still gonna have the tax rate increase. So yes, you can do something on the pension side without doing something on the debt side. That said, again, and understanding your concerns about timing, and maybe that's the route you go here because you want more time, I think the math works where you could do both. But it's not, in my mind at least, it's not both together or nothing at all.
And I think I have a question about process because there is no agreement yet. So okay, so what's the date? It's December 12th.
Sorry.
We have to get the budget passed. We would have to approve the agreement, correct, for the prepaid lease? I mean, isn't that a council function or no?
No, yeah, I think, no, I'm saying no, I think you're correct. We need to have that done, before the
end of the
beginning
year.
of the
The
year.
end of the
So I would envision that if this is the meeting and we're saying, hey, we're all good with it, you would approve it, subject to entering into an agreement with the authority. I would sleep much better on New Year's Eve if we have a signed agreement with the authority rather than we're working on it. And there's no reason we can't have an agreement if that's, whatever council decides, there's no reason we can't have an agreement before the end of the year.
And I know Gordon gave us all a pat on the back for taking the advice of the finance department and going to 6% assumption on the rate of return. And yet the actuary, I mean, he didn't get that aggressive.
Yeah.
His firm didn't get that
Sure.
aggressive. So it's my understanding, and he was really trying to
Yeah.
get us from 8% down to
7.25 or something, yeah.
7.5 or 7.25. So
I
what
wasn't.
are we to make of this?
I wasn't right, and I'm not going to contradict your actuary, right? So if it comes down to what does Gordon Mann say, or
What does your actuary say? Go with your actuary on this? Go with me on other things, but go with him on this, or her. What I would say is the reason 6% is in there is it's the level you could do without a tax increase. If you could do, if the mayor came back and said 5%, then the earned income tax for everybody would go up. I think part of the goal here is people are already paying 1.65. They're used to paying 1.65. Paying 1.65 on January 1st and December 31st, it doesn't make a difference. So if you're already there and I can take the target down lower and increase my chances of success in the future, then that's the argument for it. If the argument is, what does the actuary say I should do, 6 is too low, I think what would happen is the 165 for residents and non-residents would
That,
come
yeah,
down.
Gordon, not interrupt.
Please.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We decided on the equitable distribution of the income tax, where we're paying 1.65 for those of us that live in the city, making the non-residents pay 1.65. I went to Dawn and said, as you have those sheets, there's not a 6.0% interest rate on there. Dawn, if we need to get to that, remember the ability to tax, that mathematical calculation the state comes out with that says, here's your MMO minus your state aid, minus the city floor, what is that number? And that number came out to be 1.65 to get us to that, the budget number. Said, Dawn, if we have to get to that, where do you need to go? And he came back with 6%.
So that's where that number comes from.
Yeah, in order for us to charge the 1.65 to non-residents, Dawn backed into that. And you're right, it's not on there, because we were always worried, I mean, as Kaz has been the champion of this for 15 years, that going from 8 to 7.25 is such a huge jump, that going any lower may be out of the question, but it gets that equitability back in there of everyone pays the same thing. Because if I'm paying 1.65, everyone should.
Which, as I had said the other night, you know, in fairness, nobody politically ever wanted to lower it to begin with. And I think Mr. Betker thought, you know, getting it down to,
Yeah.
that was a good
7.8.
accommodation. And maybe we misunderstood him a little bit, because even I did, so I wanted to make it so it was level. Because like I said the other night, the people in the city are already feeling the pain. And I want the suburbanites to feel the pain. Because, no, I mean, I say that in a way because we get screwed on the 1%. You know, in Pennsylvania, we don't make out with the money because we have to send it back to where they live.
Right.
And I'm saying, if we can recover some of that, you know, and I said, why lower it to 1.3 like we were talking about? I said, I'm already paying it, everybody else is paying it that's working. You know, I mean, would I like it lowered, but, you know.
It's a little bit of a pain for your employers too, because of the withholding. Employers they don't care, it's not coming out of their paycheck.
when you
But
look
it's
how much
it's a little easier if it doesn't do this all the time, and it's not a yo-yo, but I don't know that that's.
Well, when you look how
a
much
huge
it
factor.
generates, and, well, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, we gotta start looking for ways to.
And to wrap this all up, and Paul will laugh at me, he already laughed at me once, maybe he'll laugh loudly, maybe he'll laugh quietly this time. Part of the reason that we think the timing for the pension is so important is because you are going into three of your four unions, not the firefighters, they have their contract. Next year it will be police officers, and 2 years after that it will be the civilians. And I believe, and this is where Paul will laugh, it's a powerful statement to be able to go into the negotiations and say, we believe your pensions are important. We have changed the actuarial assumptions and the interest earnings assumptions. We have found a way to pay for that. What's your contribution to fixing this? What are you willing to do differently for new hires? What's the different level of pension benefit that you're willing to move to? So that the residents and the non-residents, even if you don't care about them as much, have all come to the table and helped. This is your pension fund, what are you going to do? If you do nothing, that speech doesn't make any sense.
Actually, they're for it.
Go ahead, laugh.
I bet you 1,000,000% on that. My laughing is
Right,
going.
that may be what they do at the speech too,
They're-
and at least you'll be able to make it.
They're for the changes. The problem they're gonna have, and this is where I agree with you, okay? I said for years, we're gonna have to change the contribution level. You know,
Yeah, well,
that's what you're asking in a way.
there's statutory limits on what they can contribute, but what you can change is,
The new hires.
right, and there are things you can do with, so, you know, super geeky stuff, but do you take uniform allowance out of the firefighters' pension calculation, because it's not in there for police? Right now, it's either the highest point at which you retire, or the average over a period of time. Maybe it should just be the average over a period of time and don't give them the option of one or the other. These are the super geeky things that you can change in the assumptions for new hires and get a lower tier benefit without saying, you gotta pay 10%, or, you know, I'm only giving you $5 a year, whatever. You can make these changes, and in concert with the other things that the mayor has proposed, now you've got a full, well-rounded response to the pension issue.
I'd like us to answer Curtis's question. What if we leave the pension at 6% and update the life expectancy to current? I think you can put that up on the screen, can't you?
Yeah, and the handouts, Mayor, we printed out, if everybody
You
remembers.
have that one that says
All of them, yeah, we did.
I like it up on the screen too, so
Okay.
everyone can see it, we can talk
Okay.
about it.
Do you wanna-
So we're not gonna take 90,000 from the water authority,
Correct.
90 million.
or 90 million. We're gonna
Give or take a few.
but we're
Yeah.
gonna
Are they all
update our
separate?
pension
Yes.
to
Yes.
where it should be.
Do you have-
Let's
I
see
don't know,
what,
do you have-
how much, it's gonna tell us what money we need then to balance.
Take
Equates to a
take a
tax.
pile.
And I have a question though, is, Paul,
Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't sure.
Thanks.
The 500,000, you have an agreement with the parking authority.
Yes.
That wasn't in there and now it's
No, it
back?
was not in the book
Okay,
when you got the book, but when we gave you the 4 handout sheets that showed the change to the special levy and the pension down to 6%, those 4 sheets, the 12th line down does have that 500,000 in there. So the one thing, remembering, these numbers are all based
Okay.
on,
So that's our answer there, right? 4.1 million we're short, so you need to come up with 4.1 million additional revenue.
This year.
That's for 2020.
Okay, and that'll be how much in
No
millage?
property tax increase.
That's, okay, so
1.5?
how much do we need?
oh, yeah.
1.45 is that?
1.65.
It said
1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just did a handout, and for the handout you're gonna get is only, and we don't have any of the debt service maneuvers or manipulations. This is the assumption that there's going to be no water deal. So, yeah, 1.5 gets you, I mean, you're within $50,000, so it's 1.5.
And the important thing to remember here is if you change that 6 to a 625 or 65 or
That's what we have
75,
here?
it won't make a difference.
Six.
You will
No,
still
we
need
don't
the
have-
same
did-
amount of real
okay.
estate
Jim,
tax.
on here,
You're talking about
we
these
did the 8, we
Yeah.
did the 7.25, and we did the 6.
Okay.
I mean, if you want us to go back and play,
No,
let's
no,
make a
just-
deal on 7.25, 8, 7.75, I mean,
It's not a lot.
yeah, Teresa sat with me on
Yeah.
doing these sheets
Paul and I were
for
just-
months and months. Your dollars,
And I just
At least
wanna,
it's
I wanna point out
So
that
is that- at least it's
with the 6%, we saved $67 million.
yeah, the
Pension.
savings up in the upper right-hand corner.
With the 7.25, if I'm not mistaken, we only saved like 14 million,
Right.
right? That was the thinking also with going down to 6.
I want to go back and talk about timing again and talk about 2020, doing the valuation, approving theoretically approving the upfront payment or the sale of the Erie Waterworks. So you get the revenue in 2020. Couldn't you still pay down the debt? 2 months
Absolutely.
Into
Yes.
2020?
Yes. But,
And couldn't you set aside the 5 million then?
yes,
For the tax increase that we're looking at for 2021? I'm just asking.
yes, we could do that, but we need to get through this year. If we don't do that, if we don't do a tax, Lisa, go back to the,
8.
no, do 6, and then 0.
That's right. Oh, it's 0 for the taxes.
Yeah. That's what we need, the gap we need to bridge at that point in time.
And we have no money for Chris Crown.
No, but I
No,
mean,
that includes money for, that's in there.
That's in there.
Yes,
That's in there?
that's in there.
Get a commitment, right?
No. That's in there.
I don't mean to interrupt. I have, my daughter is ill and, my wife has to work. So we've kind of juggled it. So she's leaving and so I have to
gotta
go
get
home. So I apologize. But does anybody have any questions for me?
I want to say thank you.
That's not a
You always give me a big ego, so just.
I like how you said you know, you're not, you know, I like the way you put things on the table for us, and I like that.
Walk out here with a big head.
Never half, whatever.
Yeah, you should have left that sweatshirt on, now you never get it back
Yeah,
on.
that's-
Zero is the real estate
All right,
tax
thank you.
Be
increase.
safe.
All right, thanks.
I'll
Prayers for
have
your
my
mom.
phone if
Yeah, I didn't know
anyone needs
every
me.
factor. 7.757.
What is our history on property tax increases?
Been 2015, it's about page 8 of the budget handout book.
The workbook?
Yeah,
15 was our last property tax increase.
yes. You wanna? If everybody didn't, yeah, put it on screen, what page is it?
What's in the handout?
I don't know, Lisa's gonna get it right now. It is on page, I don't know, 13, 12, 11, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah, mine's a mess.
Annual millage rate, page 19 of the book.
Oh, You mean the
book?
handout book?
Yes.
Handout.
The handout book, sorry, the handout book.
Here.
18? Did you say 18?
19?
19. There we are.
There it is.
Where's my table?
So what this shows is since 2000, last 12 years, taxes have gone up about 30.65%. So divide that out, about 2.5–3% a year.
But it wasn't done every year.
No, it was
in
not done every year.
clumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There have been these big jumps
Right.
whenever
Zero,
we,
zero, zero, zero.
whenever
maybe.
we needed to do something.
Which is why we want, we call nominal increases. Realistic increases.
I think I know I gave everybody those 6 sheets of paper we handed out. Those are, what these are last, on Monday when we went through and, said this is the 6, these are just the
Which Monday?
printouts of those sheets. 3 days ago Monday. Those are the I printed out the sheets that we talked about. I think one of the things, and sooner or later this is gonna come up, is the dollar effect on what this is gonna do for everybody around town. And this sheet that you're gonna see is we tried to take an average of if somebody makes $50,000 and we always talk about the $100,000 home, the top of this sheet is gonna show, this year, the very left, the yellow is what, do we have that one on there too, Lisa? Oh, she's talking to Teresa. Okay, yeah, that one. Do this on this. There you go. This just tries to break down, I think, because the question's asked. Curtis, you've asked it. If we go to 6%, what is the effect going to be on Paul at his house? And I make $50,000 and currently, the green, if we go to the 6% actuarial assumption rate with the 2014 mortality tables and updated retirement tables also, that's what that 6% says. We're gonna be able to raise our special levy for the non-residents to the 1.65% that we're at today. I'm paying on my $50,000 a year salary about $825. Well, the person that lives outside the city, next year would also pay $825, but at the 1.18% level, which I'm gonna bounce back to the yellow column, that person's paying about $590 this year. So there, as Ed had mentioned, that person, and Kaz also, that person living outside the city is gonna pay a little bit more in tax, and that's for every one of those 60% of the people that work in the city that don't live in the city. So our then interest, or our real estate tax increase at the 6%, falling back to these tables, that person's gonna pay about $145 more on that $100,000 home. Again, if it's a $70,000 home, they'd pay a little less. If it's a $200,000 home, they're gonna pay a little more. But we just wanted to say, if it's a $100,000 home, which we always talk about, that's the roundabout average of a home, they're gonna pay $145 more. So in our case, at that 6% level, you'd be paying about $145 more per year.
Can you
About
just
$12
throw
a
out
month.
the other fees that we're increasing to the refuse and the water sewer? What are those going up to per quarter?
Well, the sewer's gonna be based on your usage.
Yeah, but what is
So the average sewer person's gonna pay about $10 more, and then the refuse that we proposed here,
is, that's the one we.
how bad is that? I can't remember.
skipped last year, I think, right? Is that the
We
one
did,
took
yes,
out?
we did, and
I think, is it gonna
it's
go-
about $10.25, $10.35 per person, per quarter, $41 per year. Yes, and then the sewer's gonna be about 40 to 45. Again, depending,
Yeah, I
that,
think it was
because that's
like
usage based,
I think it was like around $80
Yes,
for those.
yeah.
different fees.
so.
So the hit overall would be what, about two?
If we go to 6% and which would raise the non-city special levy, and we do the tax increase to get that without the water deal, yeah, that person, to answer that question, would be paying about $225 more per year.
Which person? The city resident?
City resident, yes.
With
So
$100,000.
why does it say 145?
Because Liz asked me to add in the sewer and the refuse. So the sewer and the refuse are both about $40.
And so what would happen with, if, again, if we didn't do this till early 2020?
Yes.
With the upfront lease or the sale to Erie Waterworks, and we paid off the debt, what happens to that money? Does that just fall to the bottom line then?
We could do-
2021? What would be the, like, the scenario of what we could do with that? So, obviously, so that
Well,
we have
again,
something to
as
show.
Ed made mention, when that deal comes through, it comes to council for final approval. So whatever, our suggestion is to use that money, obviously, this year, to give some money to the Business Loan Development Fund for all the good they're doing in the city and all the jobs they're bringing into the city, and also to help balance the budget. And then the other 85 million, we're proposing to use that to pay down debt. You're the final, the final.
But if we didn't, if we waited a few months?
Yes,
could
and we
could
do it next
still
year.
pay down the debt, and then could we still say to Chris Groner, you're gonna get your lump sum, but it'll be a little bit later in the year, it's not gonna be January 1st, can we still appropriate that money?
We could appropriate that out of unanticipated fund balance, but it would not be in this budget. It wouldn't be in the budget, so then we're back to dealing with how to balance this budget. But yes, absolutely, we could do that. Liz is asking if we don't do it till next year, it wouldn't be in the budget, so then we,
But if she's saying wait to give Chris his money,
next year, out of the 90
Could
million.
it still be
but not,
used in 2020 because we would get this lump sum
Yes.
early in the
we
year rather than
appropriate
late?
it?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. One of the things too, and not to throw a monkey into this, or a wrench into the, whatever that saying is, you were always the one with sayings. The 90 million is based on the 10-year extension of the lease. Not that that's good, bad, and different, but that
Well-
90 million, that,
What people have to realize though
That's-
too, is we're almost extending that lease for 10 years for only $10 million.
well, that's time value of money, remember, we're
Yeah,
talking
but-
about 2050 through, well,
You
that.
can time
yes,
value all
that's-
you want, 4
you're-
million,
you got an accounting
average
degree.
4 million a year
Yeah.
for 10 years is 40 million, okay?
Right, but I mean, you're talking about shooting that money out at 4%, 35, 40 years from now. It's not worth the $4 million or $5 million it would be worth in cash. The time value of that money says it's only worth $2 million or so. So,
Again,
okay,
10 years, 10 million, where if the average is 4 million a year lease payment, that would be 40. You're saying that 40 million isn't worth 40 million?
not in today's dollar, or in future value dollars, no.
It
no,
will
it's
be,
not.
but it isn't gonna be worth only 10 million though.
Well, if, yes.
You wouldn't think.
No, you wouldn't think, but the math of it says yes.
40 years, long time.
I'm,
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Mann, what is your professional opinion? What would you do?
Well, what would I do? Well, I would definitely, I would go with what number is this? I would go with the green for I would go with the pension changes. People are already at 1.65. If you had to go up to get to 6%, I would say, geez, 6% is a little aggressive, but you're already there. So it's like, okay, well, it's not gonna cost anybody more. So that was the whole reason I came, was because of the pension thing. On the debt side, I don't have the timing consideration that you do, right? I have the luxury of just being able to look at the math and the numbers, so it's a little different perspective. I would say, yeah, let's go pay down the debt and have lower debt. But I don't have the timing concern that you do. I can just look at the debt and say, 6 is, what is it, 2 is lower than 9, or whatever it is. I would take 2 instead of 9. I don't have to live with the, why did you take this deal? Why didn't you take more time? You do.
Thank you.
When is your next report? The final report is
So the
coming.
final report, the last chapter, where we are in that is we've been sending out chapter drafts to the administration and folks who are directly impacted by our, if I'm gonna recommend or even raise the prospect of a staff reduction, I want the department directors to see it first, right? So we sent that to folks this week. We've heard back from all of them. By end of day tomorrow, the last chapter, draft chapter, will be in the senior administration's hand. At that point, we will put an executive summary on it, and we'll say, this is it. It's, you know, tell us what you want to do next. So I would like to have that this is it, tell us what you want to do next. I'd like to have it before Christmas, but it may not be until New Year's Day. But that at that point, the administration will take their time, whatever time they need to go through it, let us know. We've heard back from the administration on about half of the chapters, and we've been pumping these things out, and they're pretty long, so understandable. And they've been busy. And then it would come to you, everybody.
And there are, in your preliminary report, though, you also recommended valuations for other assets that the city owns.
We did,
Including my favorite, the golf courses, but
we-
didn't you also recommend?
We did, but what we have recommended is do water first, then do sewer.
Okay,
I guess you could try and do both together, but the reason I would sequence them one before the other, one, it's complicated enough. 2, you may want the water system to bid on the sewer system, but they can't do that if they don't exist, right? So you'll know if they exist based on the water, and you also just don't want to keep them in existence to run your sewer authority, your sewer system, that would be weird.
okay.
So figure out what you want to do with the water system. Does it go to the authority? Do you sell it to them? Do you lease it? Whatever it is. And then once you've got that answer, then move on to the sewer system.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions? I kind of going back to that cheap water thing, which was actually a great slogan if you think about it. You know, people could get that.
Yeah.
I think that the narrative has to be shaped, and I think that the pension thing is actually a really good story that finally, and you explained it with Ed Beth's help, a little bit more than we had heard about how that could ultimately impact the overall pension situation.
Sure.
Because what I was concerned about is that, you know, we're gonna be pouring more money into it, and there didn't seem to be a way out of looking at the other end of it.
Right.
I mean, I don't think this, the salvation is just, well, hey, taxpayers, keep paying more money
Right.
for the pension.
Yeah.
There has to be
I
some
agree.
fundamental change.
I agree.
So I really applaud you for saying
Sure.
what has to be said
Yeah.
in a clear way that
Yeah.
helps us to understand it, so. I
Yeah,
don't know,
and that's why I think the timing is so important on that, because the year.
Anyone else, council? So I know we're still faced with, I think our first decision as a council we gotta make is, once again, determine if we want this water authority deal to be part of. We can't go forward with our budget unless we're on or in or out with the
2020 budget.
with the water deal, that upfront lease. We get that determined, and then we move on with what we decide, I believe.
So you're not committed now to fixing the pension assumptions?
Well, I think we are
Okay, that's what I
committed
thought.
here,
I thought that was a commitment. Okay.
but I think part of that committal is determine if we're in with the water, we gotta determine,
Well, what you need to do is either do the water authority prepayment or raise taxes in order to do
Right.
that.
that's what
We
it
understand
comes
that.
down to,
Yes.
correct,
I
we
think
understand.
that's clear.
Can I ask, with regard to the rest of the book, I mean,
Is there anything else?
yeah, what, I mean,
I
not
guess-
to change subjects, or is this something that
Yeah,
once you as a group decide, you've made a
Okay.
decision there?
I mean, Liz brought up the case with,
Some fees.
Do we have a list of the things?
The fee increases?
The fee increases, Liz, the fire department was gonna get to us. I know that the easement, Curtis has talked about the easement. David says there's 32 easements.
Well, even if we pass them, not this year, let's say we pass them
I
early
have,
next
yeah,
year.
she asked me.
They'll still have a benefit on the next year's budget.
32 leases, or not leases, 32 easements. Pittsburgh charges $250 to get an original easement, but they only charge like 25 bucks a year after that. So it's not like this is a
it's not
can
a
I quote
game
it?
changer.
Game changer, Gord.
Right, right.
This is not a game changer.
But I think
And-
the idea was to just let people know.
Yes,
that
oh
it's
no,
like,
we're
you know,
working
just-
on, we're
yeah.
working on what you asked us to work on. Mel has always brought up that parking in front of the house issue, and unfortunately Ed's gone, but he and I spoke about this when I got your email last week, and Ed's feeling is he would not want to write an ordinance that says you can buy the spot in front of your house, but there are zones, and up even by St. Vincent Hospital, if you're a resident of that.
Resident-only parking.
Yes, resident-only parking in that street. Ed would be okay with that. And I guess there's areas, three other areas of town where there's a lot of movement. But and I didn't bring that stuff down with me, I'm sorry about it, but we looked up other cities and, like Lancaster and this one, that one, $100. So again, I don't know how many zones we could set up, but could we, add.
Well, the problem around here is nobody wants to attack the problem zone, okay? We have a problem up on East 38th Street, okay? And that was suggested in previous administration, didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And yet,
Oh, yeah.
in the past, we have two zones,
Well,
one by
that was gonna ask
Hammond,
that question.
one by Vincent, okay? Now, here's one here that came up the other day. We have to deal with the parking authority, and we're gonna have to negotiate with them. And I would hope that the mayor would go into those discussions, looking at all the history of what we gave up and what they took and all that. We used to get revenue from the parking meters, we don't anymore. We need to look at that thing, and the parking authority is a big issue. I won't be around, but I think the council should attack that, decide how they want to approach it. And they brought up some issues about how when contractors, and remember I told you, I think we need to monitor contractors in this town a little
Yes.
bit. Maybe we need easement fees. They brought up a point that they have one street closed down in Erie now for about a month and a half. And the parking meters are dead, and so is the public use of them. So I think we need to look at that lease with the parking authority, that deal. And I think you need to use a lot of, go over it so that both sides benefit. They need money to make repairs. The other day, they had to spend about $1 million on elevators and stairwells. I was at the meeting. I see their problem, but I see ours too. And I hope the mayor and the administration, along with council, deals with the parking authority and that. But I want to see, and I agree with Liz, we've been talking about all these fee increases. And I think it's time we start implementing them. Because there's a little bit I talked around at the COG the other day. They're not giving their assets away for $4.05. And why we do is beyond me, so I would hope that the council in the future, Curtis and I have been talking for how many years, Curtis, about easements.
Here's a question. Well, I'm just gonna be, I don't know if it's controversial or not. Like, I think that $90 million sounds good on paper up front. I do agree that it was kind of fast. It came fast to you all. You did the best you could, I feel like, to make all these things happen at the same time. So I have a lot of respect and value that tremendously. The other thing is, if it was fast to you, it's even faster to us, and we have to vote on it. Is one thing. If we're having legitimate conversation, and we are, about evaluation for our water service, I think, and maybe I'm naive, I'll just make it too simple, but I think that an upfront payment on the lease has to in some way, maybe we don't see it right away or in the moment, has to have some effect on the value in the future of what we're talking about leasing or what we're talking about potentially selling. So where I am with it is, I think we're moving too fast to take the 90. I think we have to have the courage to say those actuarial adjustments need to happen. The next level of courage is to say, I'm willing to vote on a 1.45 or 1.4 or 1.5 mil tax increase. Those, to me, those are like the layers of courage that have to happen. Because I think there's a commitment on the administration, of course, those that are on council now that will still be here next year. And which is only what, one new person on council next year?
Three new people.
Well, Mel
No.
is not new.
No.
It's gonna be who?
They're gonna be
Two that were
replacing you,
elected
Chad.
and Kaz replacement.
Keys, okay, right,
Oh,
Kaz,
Brzezinski.
that's what I forgot about Ed,
Brzezinski,
or excuse me, Mr.
Mr.
Brzezinski.
Keys and,
Yeah, and then a replacement. So, even with that said, I think they'll see the conventional wisdom in this. I wish those people would be here. That's another story. So anyway, I think there's a commitment with the majority of council that will still be here, of course, the administration and those new people, to make these things happen early in the next year. We talked about that the last two nights. The reality is that if we take the 90 million, we're still doing a tax increase at some point and at some level probably next year, or we could push it 2 years, maybe.
I don't agree with that.
I'm not sure how you make up the gap, Mayor. How do you make up the gap that we fill with the 4.17?
You know, one thing we haven't factored into this at all is that the realistic assumptions you're committed to putting in place on the pension, as long as we don't have a Great Depression or a Great Recession or something happen where returns on investments go way down. What are returns on investments this year, Paul?
They're high, very
What
high.
are they? Give us a number.
That was, Teresa, it was this year.
We're in the teens,
I don't know.
right?
10,
That's
12 or
sharp,
13, it was
12%,
very, I don't
But
wanna.
now, we're
it was-
assuming
yeah,
6.
at the last
So
aggregate,
if
yes.
they're 12, that's probably low, but that's double what we're assuming. If we redo and get another estimate, what do we, you know, we could see, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, we could see a pretty dramatic decrease in what we have. We could see, I'm talking millions of dollars.
Yes.
We haven't included that at all in any of this. We don't wanna, you know, assume too much. But you could see a couple $1 million decrease in what we have to put into the pension funds. If rates continue to stay where they are in terms of rates of return on investments.
But then that's good, then maybe we don't have to have a tax increase for 2021.
That's what I'm trying to say. I don't
But I
think-
think Curtis articulated it very well, that, I mean, you did the three-prong kind of thing, Curtis. Courage to do we'll do the pension thing. Give us some time on the valuation, and then what was the third thing that you said? You had a third?
Well, the raise, we have to have the courage to raise taxes if we're choosing
Yeah.
I think the time components are the evaluation and do we feel too rushed with the $90 million upfront payment? Those I kind of clumped together. Maybe should be a 4 prongs to it, I don't know. But then the other one would be the courage to make the actuarial changes. And I think we have that gumption. And I think the pivotal piece is, if we're not willing to take the 90 million now, do we have the courage to do the tax increase necessary to still make those actuarial changes? That's the way I see it in a nutshell. And
I think also looking at the history of, there hasn't been a property tax increase since 2014, correct?
15. So, and that was the next level, and I was gonna, to kind of promote that respectfully, and I may cut you off, but I wanna agree with you. Where's the book? Where's the book at? No, I think, in all seriousness, it will be 5 years since we've had a tax increase.
we should do moderate ones, that's what we've always said.
Again, and so the reason why, and I agree with that, but in this moment we're in, a 1.5 mil tax increase. We have the numbers here on a $100,000 home is what? $145 increase a year. Add $80 round numbers for other two fees that increase $225 a year. Simple like elementary school math, right? Pretty round number, pretty close. which breaks down to like under $19 a month. That's in my opinion, to allow the elected, trusted officials to take their proper due diligence to make sure we make the right long-term moves. Less than $20 a month for a person living in a $100,000 home. I'm not saying that's rich or anything like that, but $20 a month, if we really break it down.
About $1 a day.
I mean, and I don't want to sound like, children in Africa, $20, 20 cents a day, you can feed
That's
a
what I was
child.
hearing.
But when you really break it down, it really is that. It really does break down, quite literally, that simple and that minute, respectfully. And if I was to get absolutely ridiculous, it's like 31 cents a month for the last 5 years of no tax increase. I know that's ridiculous. But the truth of the matter is, for what the citizenry is going to get, in my opinion, these actuarial changes that have been horribly beating us over the head for generations. $18 a month. See, you gotta be careful. It's all about how we craft it.
That's what I was talking about.
It's all about the
narrative.
language. When we raised the fee for the vendors or whatever, the food trucks, we raised it what, like $100. It hadn't changed. It hadn't been raised in like 30 years. It was since like 80, like our mortality table was 83. You know what I mean? And watch how it was marketed. 100% increase. Not $100. 100% increase, which breaks down to less than what, a year with 12 months. So when we really, and I think we use language like tax increase, taboo. That's why this stuff is still a problem, because we run from taboo language. I think we have an opportunity to take our time and make the necessary move, which may be a harsh tax increase, but really, is it really harsh? Because it hasn't been one in 5 years.
I think we're also gonna.
You know what I mean?
Chris, we're also gonna have the final report.
The final
from
report,
PFM,
right.
Which is gonna require more courage. But if you can show citizens that we are making strides, not just with the pension, even though that's one of the three heads,
Sure.
but doing what Kaz has talked about, changing the culture. If there's that commitment there, and there's gonna be additional interesting options in the final report, there is the chance to do this right, and then you don't have people saying, why did you just take 3 weeks and decide that you're gonna take a $90 million payment? That was like too short a period of time. But it doesn't mean that we aren't gonna do it, and I think, the administration has to worry because there are new people coming on board, but you do have some, I don't think I can call myself a veteran yet, I've only been here 2 years.
You are a veteran.
You have me and Jim and Mel and Kathy will still be here, and Mel has
Have some
We-
experience.
but we will have been through
I'm
all
willing
this
to be a free
discussion.
consultant, just for coffee and water. I'm just teasing.
You know what I would
but seriously,
suggest,
I
Liz?
think it's,
I like what Curtis said, I like what you said. And I would suggest to the mayor, and I'm not telling you how to do your business, but I think this would help.
As if he's not
I really think it would help. We're making this decision together. I would suggest a press conference where either president or whoever the president selects join you up in it, and you explain to the public why. I found out when I was on the school board, it worked a lot better when we made a statement why we raised taxes and why we did what we did. And then we showed those results. So I think it's important, if we get up and we say, hey, look, these are hard, we understand that. But the changes we make now that are gonna feel pain today, what you said, and we've known this for a long time about the pension, needs to be explained to them that, hey, you're not gonna see this immediate change, but 10, 15 years down the line, this is gonna pay off for us. This is reality. We're facing reality for the first time. Also, the fact that we're not saying this $90 million is bad or good. Let's look at it and see if it's the best deal for us long-term. And then we gotta tell them, we're gonna change the culture around here. That we're not gonna just do things like we did, what did Ron say? Like we've always done things in the past. But I think it's important if we roll this out in a joint thing where we take the blame too for a raise, like Curtis said, it's gonna take political courage.
How many new jobs will there, when is the Erie Insurance new headquarters opening? It looks like it's getting awfully close.
I believe they still have another year.
2021,
But I mean, you
We're
will
gonna
have more.
Which is supposed to create,
500 new jobs. a year.
Right, you will have more 500 new people contributing to the earned income tax.
Either way
credit,
you look at it, right?
Whether they live here or live elsewhere. So there's that forward motion and
there's
positive thing. And then,
possibly some
you know, the
revenue.
chamber says that they're gonna
2,000
create
jobs in 5
2,000
years.
jobs.
5 years.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
So I think, Kaz, you're on to something there. Again, it's not about telling people stuff that's not true, but it's about telling the story in a way that brings all those elements together.
And guess what? If we were to do this, and I am proposing, right? In
Right.
general, loose language, I am proposing that we not take the 90 million up front. We take our time and study it, couple with the evaluation early in the next year, and we keep our mortality, or our changes that we did with the mortality rate and the rate of return, 6%, all of that, right? Do the tax increase necessary, but explain it and let people know why we're doing it. And it's not just to fill the budget. This is raising taxes at this level does this for the pension fund, which makes our city stronger in the long run. Because we feel budget, I've been on council this is my 13th year. It's hard to believe, like I'm like 26, right? And I feel like until I hang around with 26-year-olds, you're old as hell.
You're not under the 40 anymore.
Right? So watch this. These have been things that have been talked about before I was here and the whole time I was here. And no one would ever say, let's do a 1.5 mil. We would cry over like a 0.43 mil because of the taboo language of tax increase. If we bite the budget, rip the scab off now, and take whatever courage it takes to make this kind of a change, while still doing due diligence on some significant, $90 million is significant, selling our water system is significant. Excuse me. If we do those things together, hopefully the mayor's actually right in every way, that we won't have to have another tax increase for another 5 or 6. Hell, let's keep moving, push it out. You know what I mean? But I think this is the time where if we don't do the hard tax increase piece, then we're just gonna perpetuate, even no matter what we do, we're gonna still be pushing stuff down the road, in one way or another. I don't know, I feel like I'm getting too big talking now,
And
but.
Curtis, one thing I'd add to what you're saying is that if you do that, if you make the changes in the pension assumptions to make them realistic, and you do a tax increase to cover it rather than take an upfront lease, and you decide 3 to 6 months after study it next year, okay, let's do the 90 million. I think you'll be able to do a tax decrease next year.
Well, I mentioned that to Jim. He looked at me like you're nuts, but I did
Only
that.
because once you.
Well, but here's the thing, and thank
And
you
I'd
for
love
bringing that
that.
up, Mayor, because that was, I whispered that to him about 30 minutes ago when I was kind of musing this over in my little notebook. But if we were to do that, now that's transformational, because if what you're hoping for, we are all hoping for,
Or you
then
can keep the
we
money
could
and
dial
have
it
a
back.
real capital budget for
Or,
a change.
or readjust it and put it, but it has to be not to fill, my point is, and I promise I'll stop. It can't be just to keep filling gaps. If you take that money and it's towards a capital budget, or, the sewer authority, or the sewer fund, or water reserve, excuse me. Water reserve fund, all those things, I think we can actually make some headway instead of sitting and looking at charts. Well, I wonder, can we get a fire truck this year? Can we get a fire truck next year? And then we can actually make some momentum. But I'll be honest, and sounds crazy. I think if we don't do this tax increase today, it's gonna really throw us a lot further off than where we could be in the next 5 or 10 years. I really do, because everything else is gap filling, because everything gets pushed down the road, and what we're doing is gap filling for budgets, as opposed to gap filling for budgets on one hand, but still trying to be transformational on the other, and it's like this tension pole, I think.
Okay, one last question I have for you, Paul.
Yes.
Once again, if we don't do the upfront lease, and we had figured in that upfront lease
1.7 for Groner.
1.7, yeah.
Does that go into the general budget then, or does that go to,
If we don't do the water lease, that's in the books. If we don't do the water lease, yeah,
okay, it's already in there.
it's
and
already in there,
It's allocated already.
yes.
It was just the water lease money was going to cover that.
Yes, it was going to, if we do the water lease, then the water lease is going to pay for that money.
If we don't do it, the tax increase will be.
Yeah. It's worth about 0.6 mils of tax. Is that what you're asking me, or?
That's, yeah, I wonder how that affects the budget, but
Yeah,
from my understanding, that money is already per se,
Committed to this local businesses.
and I'm not against it, I'm just looking at big dollar items that, you know, just say in 6 months, if the water deal were to go through, that, then that 1.6 that was figured in that, or 1.7 that was figured in the lease payment deal, would go back to the general fund, or would just, would
it
figure
would go
in that
wherever,
lease deal? or-
wherever you want it to go.
Cause it really wouldn't have to go there if it's being paid out of here
No, the
now.
water authority, again, if we extend the lease 10 years, and if interest rates stay in the neighborhood they're at right now on the newest bond charts, we're gonna get in the neighborhood of that $90 million. You know, how we spend it, we're
Well,
gonna
we
come to
started with
you.
that 5
Yes.
mil.
Yes, this year, we were going to use, on these sheets, $4.1 million to balance the budget. Paul was going to give us, even though we were gonna do the deal in 20, Paul was gonna give us our $3.6 million right up front for that year's lease payment. And then when it came time
To finalize it.
finalize the lease, he was gonna subtract that out, obviously. And then we were gonna use 1.7 million of that when we closed to give to Chris, and then the rest of it was gonna go to pay down debt service. So,
That's my question.
if we do it next year, and interest rates stay in the same neighborhood, we're gonna get in, and we extend the lease 10 years, we're gonna get about, again, give or take $90 million. At that point in time,
We could even put more money.
none
to
of
pay
the
down
money
more
is
debt.
spoken to in any way, shape, or form, anywhere. So then it would be, if you wanted to take all 90 million and pay down the debt, that schedule we showed you a week or two ago that we had the bond people run that showed that if you did this at 85 million, your payments would go down to 2.8 million. If we do it next year, again, we have the opportunity to make that bond schedule look however we want, but you're also gonna have a couple, $3 more million to put down on debt. So, I can't answer you, you know, I'm giving very approximate, not very approximate numbers, but 2.8 could become a lesser number because you've used more of the proceeds to pay down more of the debt. Or as Curtis said, and Gordon will, I mean, the water reserve fund, we get $500,000 a year to spend on capital. And we eke through that as best we can. If you were to say, okay, we're only gonna spend the 85 again and put 3 or 4 million more into the water reserve fund, you know, $3 million at the amount of, $4 million at the amount of money we get from the water reserve fund could be another $175,000, $200,000 of capital every year. You know, that's, now we have $750,000. Where that's, you know, now we're getting to the point where AJ's not driving himself nuts up there trying to put 23-year-old trucks together, where we're on a schedule of buying new trucks. We're on a schedule, you guys are gonna see next Wednesday on council, that we have a little problem up in the penthouse, that we have to have the HVACs fixed up there. Yeah, 6 foot. So, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, we have some old buildings. This building's 60 years old. one of the firehouses had a problem today. There's a lot of
I
things.
guess-
So the money would always be needed in capital.
How certain are we that interest rates are gonna stay in the same ballpark?
Well, didn't the Fed just say that, I mean, I don't know, what does that affect it?
I have
What
no
did they
idea.
do?
No,
What
no,
did-
don't know.
Other
side of the
What
firm.
did they just say? They aren't gonna do any more cuts, right?
No.
So,
To answer that, Renee, I don't, I'd love to say they're gonna stay the same level. I don't know that they're gonna go up. Everyone keeps saying they're gonna go up. They have to go up sooner or later, but they really haven't. And I don't know, could they possibly go down? Maybe.
That's the only, I
Yeah.
think it's a slight risk, but that's the only risk.
Yeah, yes.
If rates go up, we'll get less money.
If rates go up, and I did the tables, the difference between 3.7 and 3.7 and 4.0, I think I handed that one out too. What the numbers, you're talking, could be $1 million.
No, but you're actually,
Yeah.
you're, by increasing taxes, you're covering that risk a little bit at least.
Like-
There'll be several million in moving taxes, so if we only get 88 million, net, we're still about the same.
Yeah, not 2006 and 7, Ron, along with, we've always done it that way. When he was over at the county, if, and again, I pay a large amount of taxes, but it builds upon itself. I'm not advocating raising taxes, but I am saying it builds upon itself with the budget itself. So if we don't do it this year, we all saw that those 5-year projections, and, Liz, you brought it up the other night. Last year we projected a $5 million hole this year. Those numbers are pretty good numbers. The money builds on itself.
what else is coming online in 2020 in terms of new employees? I mean, what about the UPMC stuff and the Women's Center research and everything? I mean, I guess it would be nice to just have that kind of catalog. It's not gonna be a huge amount, but if there are a certain number of new jobs that we know are gonna be in Erie with
Right.
decent salaries and paying the earned income tax.
Maybe we could have Chris come down for a finance committee meeting in January or February. He's got his hand on the pulse of all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
I don't.
Okay.
I know what you know from reading it in the paper, so.
I think not to, again, oversell the thought that I had or my idea, but with all the economic development stuff we're talking about, what you just said in relation to having Chris come down, all those things are potential and at some level very likely. Some of those things are gonna happen. The growth of employees through Erie Insurance, those are things, but we can only budget on what we can control.
Oh, right.
As much, no, what I'm saying is that if we do the hard budget questions to get us where we need to be, and do the hard budget issues and handle them and get us where we need to be, everything else becomes benefit. And everything else gives us wiggle room, and everything else gives us margin. And we are notorious, respectfully, for budgeting, just because it's the way it is.
Wishful thinking?
Budgeting wishful thinking, or budgeting people's poor behavior, because we're gonna raise the fee for, tickets, or raise the fee for people not doing right stuff, and we budget around that, but when people's behavior get better, we lose revenue, you know what I mean? So
When they
this
figure
is
it out and
something,
say,
yeah,
hey, it's-
so this is something that we can manage, and with these numbers, and again, I don't know if my numbers are right, but just in general, if we do those things, we are now in control. Everything else is benefit, even the $90 million is, if we take that up front and we do, pay down the debt, we're doing that for the legitimacy of, I believe, what the mayor's intention is to do long-term transformational change with the pension and with paying down our debt. We can do that without trying to do it at the same time as a filler for something else. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
absolutely.
So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with all of it, is that we can, and then we talk about culture change, Kaz, that's a culture shift, that's a culture leap, I think, right there. And going back to what Paul was just talking about, being able to actually be in front of a capital budget. Like, you know what I mean? Like, actually have something to work with, and you can plan, because you not hope you're gonna have money, like this money's there. You know what I mean? That's a whole different ballgame, I think. I won't be here, I'll be probably in the audience somewhere, but I really think this is a great opportunity for us to do all of it at the same time. And but we're not hanging on a one-time thing. We've been doing that forever, hanging on like the next one-time filler, the next one-time filler, the next two-piece filler. This gives us some management, we can stand on our own 2 feet and make valid decisions next year about the 90 million or the sale. Because we're not worried about filling the budget gap for $5 million.
Right.
I know I overtalk everything.
No,
I get
no.
it from my mom. It's all her fault. But I think that gives us our best position of strength moving forward into the next couple of years.
I'm fine with, if you'll approve the pension changes and hold off on the study until you're comfortable whether to get the prepayment or not, and make up the difference with a tax increase. I'm fine with that. Be happy to do a press conference if you want to do it or whatever.
I'm thinking for starters, I guess consensus of the council here now, we're going to hold off on the lease agreement. Does that sound, I mean,
But not put it like on the total back burner.
no.
First of the year.
No.
That you're using per se.
I guess hold off on it for this budget.
Oh, yes.
Which brings us to the action, right,
Brings us back
to the
to,
pension stuff.
Can I just read you
What-
guys something? So
I-
this
you
is,
know my feelings.
Dateline Wilkes-Barre, with the new administration taking over in January, this is from November, and so much unknown about the proposed sale of the sewer system as the solution to the city's financial problems. Council Thursday slowed the pace of the plan into next year to gather more information and public input. This is what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's that process, and that, while they've done that, well, I won't
Well,
talk,
we
I
know-
won't talk badly of one client to another, so yes, they've done that.
Okay. Anyhow, so we aren't the only ones that
No, you're
have
not.
put the brakes on.
Well, I think, so brings us to the pension, and you know how I feel about it, I'm ready to make the changes.
I mean,
That's the other article from 2 weeks ago, they're about to lose control of their pension fund because they haven't done what we're asking,
Are they in Act 47?
not yet.
Wow.
They applied and were rejected 2 years ago.
So, do we want to, Jim, do we want to stop for this evening and have Rose come back on Monday night and whatever changes we're gonna make, or are we good with, I mean,
I guess
I
with
don't
being
want somebody to
said
say,
that
yeah, I
the
mean-
water deal's off the
water goes
table,
off the
we,
table?
you guys wanna just look at your books one more time over the weekend and look at the different choices with the assumptions and all that, that's fine in case
I
something.
mean, we should bring Rose in Monday then.
Yeah.
So if anything, we want to do anything formally, we'll have.
Cut the treasurer's budget,
Significantly?
oh,
He probably wants to
Just
volunteer.
remember.
The new treasurer probably wants to volunteer.
This is not a threat, but just remember, if you're just behind a little bit, you will feel the full wrath of a smaller staff on your.
Here's,
this is
here's,
what friends are for.
here's my question, can we, I guess we should, we have Sonia's out, has to vote, Mel's out. As far as other council members, we need to make sure, I'm not sure, she can vote on the phone. if she
Call
needs to
by
try to call in.
at our meeting.
But we need them to understand what the heck we talked about today and see if, we probably have, if who's here is willing to move forward with what we just talked about, that's one thing. But we still need to inform them, give them all the clarity they need, answer their
Lisa,
questions the
this
best we
would-
can.
We've already approved, what did we do? We approved the tax rate though,
At the old, without the millage
at the old
increase.
one,
Right.
but, so what will we do next week?
No, we approved the tax rate at the new. At-
Where, on the first reading?
Yeah, the first reading, 1.65.
Oh, we did?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
That's
You're
what
talking
we
about
did.
millage, you're talking about millage. You're talking
Oh,
about
millage rate, no, we did
Millage,
not.
right.
No, we'll have, so that's not,
Just.
Liz, last year we didn't have, normally Rose comes in, and again, if you wanna change the, Kaz, we've, in my mind, because Kaz, you told me we were gonna raise the amusement tax. In my mind,
I was hoping we would.
well,
because
there's, do we need to deliberate over that? Or if you wanna change the contribution line in the budget, or if you wanna change something in this line item,
Well, I think
Rose
that's-
needs here
I mean,
to
those are the things that we
perfect
can do
those
Monday.
things Monday night,
Right,
correct.
right.
That's why when Jim said over the weekend, everybody look at those things,
Check out
because
all-
those are minor changes
Right.
to what, and we'll have something printed up Monday that shows this is, you know, it's this with all my scribble on it, and everyone's probably written their own notes on their own, but it's pretty much this with some minor adjustments to this.
I won't be able to be here Monday though, so will it be a special meeting so that we do another reading and then we do the final on Wednesday? I'm just not sure. What are we doing?
Well,
Or is this just more talk?
there's the thing, if there's only gonna be, well, there'll be four, so you'll,
Before us?
four of us, you four would have, cause it'll be, you four would have to agree to everything.
Oh, look, I
Better
can
stay
see,
healthy.
I can see the crown going heavy under it.
So,
But Sonia can.
Feelings of power.
I'm going to Pittsburgh Monday, but I
So
would
let's
think
do it
I would be
Tuesday?
back by that time, but I'd rather be safe. You can do Tuesday?
unless there's, wait, unless there's, see,
And Mel, put it this way,
are
Mel
there
might
no
be
changes to
in
the
better shape to at
finality
least
of
call
what we
in.
presented?
I have.
Do you
we
wanna
just-
change $7 in the liquid fuels budget? Do you want it?
$7.50.
Okay, $7.50. Do you wanna change $83 in the parks department? That's,
Yeah, and I
that's the
think we've
stuff.
pretty navigated that stuff pretty well, I think. I don't,
Tuesday, I'm perfect,
can we do Tuesday?
Okay.
Do you, I mean, and we could have Rose here to write down everything.
Yep.
That obviously that the group
Brings-
as a majority agree should be changed.
I may not be here Tuesday, but that's fine.
Can you call in Tuesday?
No.
No?
Cause the meeting's Wednesday at 7:30,
If there was
unless, yeah.
there was some major thing that
Is
gave
there
us a
anything-
little bump before Wednesday, we'll come in early Wednesday morning.
Does anybody have anything major
Yeah.
with regard to the document?
Not, I mean, I think we've discussed,
We've discussed it.
the
We're
two
gonna go-
major points are,
The real estate tax and
and are we going ahead with the pensions?
pension actuarial assumptions, which we're going to do. And we're gonna take the water deal out, which, again, that will make the paper document, which is just the roll-ups, a lot different, because if you remember, in this document, you know, you're seeing $45,000 of debt service payments, and that's only the leases that we have in the, actually, the print shop equipment back there. So that's gonna add, the debt service is gonna be added for this year, and, Chris Groner's loan from the Business Development Fund is going to be in there, which is gonna be offset by that tax increase. So, and then to Liz's point, that won't be in the budget for next year. If we do the deal, then we won't have to worry about giving Chris that money, and it's gonna, the interest rates are not gonna, all 88 to 92 million that we get is all gonna be able to be spent on debt service, subject to the wishes of council.
So we're not gonna meet Monday.
What time is the meeting?
Wednesday's an evening
Night-
meeting.
night-
Oh, I know, okay, Wednesday. What time are we meeting Tuesday?
I'm just asking the question. I'll print
I
the
don't think
budget
we
book
are.
as is and give it to everybody if there's any changes. I mean, as we were going, yeah,
I would just like to,
that's
You would like to
good.
meet?
I'd like to meet before Wednesday, unless
I-
we're gonna
I'm
meet during the
agreeing.
day Wednesday, because
I
there
can-
might be some changes that need to be adjusted that we vote on. You know what I mean? I don't wanna just,
I can meet
Come
Monday
in
or
on-
Tuesday, I'm okay either day.
I'm fine with either day too. I just know that on Monday, 2 people can't be, here. 3 people can't be here on Tuesday.
There's a possibility. I don't
No,
know.
not for especially you, I'm
But
just
yeah.
saying.
Done, done, done.
It's the,
And then
you know, it's a weird.
Wednesday's the formality.
Put this,
Tuesday,
for
you're
Jimmy
going to
to-
finish,
let's do Tuesday.
okay.
What time we got?
We'll go 5:30 and who knows?
You know, Randy's
Maybe
out
we'll
on,
surprise ourselves and be done by 6:30.
Randy's out on vacation. So we will print a new book for everybody with the way it looks, not just give you the roll-up. I'll print all 75 pages and put them in your inboxes, probably by late tomorrow afternoon. If
Okay,
anybody,
so can I just ask, is Tuesday then a study session or is it an official special meeting to?
study session like this one.
Okay, and then, so what do we do then, on Wednesday?
Wednesday's the regular council meeting. Tuesday, we're gonna say,
We're gonna make sure
Everything-
before Wednesday, we got everything.
Okay,
Ready for.
and
Ready
then
for-
Wednesday, we can approve the budget?
yes.
Yep,
We don't
that'll
have
be
to
it
have
then.
another meeting after.
No, Wednesday's it for the year.
If we approve it Wednesday night, that's it. It's in then. If we are not going to do that, then we have to leave the meeting open, don't adjourn it,
Correct.
and then come back, you know.
Right.
We've done that too, but, you know, if we
You
get it
have?
cleared up, it's a lot better. Right?
Not when I was here.
I think we did do that once.
Really?
I think so.
I think
It was
so.
a late night, it was like a midnight meeting, I was here
Mr.
like.
Schember was on
11
council
weren't you
then.
around? Yeah, I think so. It was a late night.
Where was I, sleeping?
Probably, that was the problem, you weren't around.
You had the Cavs game in your.
Oh, I was watching the Cavs game on my phone.
I covered a meeting on New Year's Eve when I was in college. And the budget was approved on New Year's Eve, like a few minutes before midnight.
I think I remember, I don't think I was
It
here.
would have been now, 70 or 71 or something.
Thank you, everyone, very
No,
much.
Thank you all, too, really. very
Tuesday,
We can
5:30.
discuss about cutting the finance department.
Just the director, man, not anyone else. Just the director.
Driver plus.
I, both. Drove to Pittsburgh, drove from Pittsburgh and all fly.
See you, Gordon.